You are listening to The Art of Sales. Everyone sells every day, and this is your source for conversational, real-world sales and prospecting methods that you are comfortable using and that get results. You'll help people buy instead of pushing them into being sold. Here's your host, Art Subcheck.
So I was listening to some recorded sales calls for a client in preparation for a training program that I was doing for them. And one particular rep was talking to a prospect, and he said, and right now you might be thinking that since you're in a contract with a supplier, that would hold you back. Well, here's how others have handled that. And then he proceeded to remove that possible but yet unspoken objection. So the point here is, if there's an issue that always comes up as an objection with your product or service, it's not a bad idea to bring it up first and then answer it before it becomes a major issue later. You see, by bringing up the objection before they do, you clear up that possible negative thinking early in the conversation. For example, the prospect might feel that your price is too high, and he or she therefore won't be listening very carefully to what you're saying. However, by addressing this earlier and resolving the issue, then the prospect's going to be more open to what you say later, your presentation or recommendation. So here are some specific ways to transition into bringing up that inevitable objection. For example, I bet you're asking yourself, you might be wondering if you're concerned about. In his great book, Triggers, How to Use the Psychological Triggers of Selling to Motivate, Persuade, and Influence, the copywriting and advertising genius Joseph Sugarman said that he turned losing products into profitable ones by airing out the dirty laundry and disadvantages about the products up front. And he said this reduced and then often eliminated major objections to the sale. For example, he was writing an ad for a thermostat that required installation by the consumer. So knowing that would be an objection, certainly with me it would, he would bring it up right away at the beginning of the ad. And then he'd resolve it by explaining that thermostat wires were on 24 volts. Not enough to hurt anyone. And he pointed out the wires were color-coded and they were easy to install. Not sure if I could still do it, but that it worked for him. In my all-time favorite book on persuasion, Influence by Robert Cialdini, he explains how bringing up shortcomings actually builds your credibility. He tells a story of how an unscrupulous waiter in a restaurant would often dissuade people from buying some of the more expensive dishes, saying, well, the filet isn't that good today, and then would suggest something that wasn't as costly. And customers, appreciating the honesty of the waiter, then listened very intently when he made his wine recommendations, which were typically pretty costly, and therefore it bumped up the total bill and his tip. So, yeah, I know the waiter was dishonest, but Cialdini makes his point well about that psychological principle. All right, so bottom line, if there's an objection or a concern that always comes up, bring it up first. Admit them, explain them, and then point out your advantages. All right, hey, you know what time it is.
Your attitude will be iron every way, you'll never feel what they say. It's the art of the sales quote of the day.
That's right, it's time for the quote of the day. And today's quote comes again from Jim Rohn. And Jim says, formal education will make you a living, self-education will make you a fortune. So true. And speaking of self-education and dealing with objections, I've put together a very in-depth training program, actually a webinar, on dealing with resistance, early resistance in a call, and real objections. And get this, doing it painlessly and conversationally, the way that normal people talk, without the cheesy objection rebuttals and goofy techniques that you might have been taught in the past. Things like, well, of course you're not interested yet because I haven't told you how great we are. Or, I understand how you feel. Many others have felt the same way, but after they found, come on, give me a break. So, about this training, if you're listening to this podcast within the first few days that it is released, you can attend this webinar live. Now, if you're listening later, you can access the video recording of the program and still get all of the bonuses. And the bonuses will include the slides, the transcript, and the MP3 so you can listen on any device. And what's valuable about these bonuses is that I'm given tons of word-for-word messaging examples. So here is how you can get complete details and register. So go to this site, smartcalling.training/objections. smartcalling.training/objections. You'll see all the details there, and you can register. If you're, again, listening within a couple days of this actual podcast release date, you can attend the program live. If you're listening later, you'll be able to access immediately. So smartcalling.training/objections. Thank you so much for investing your valuable time with me. Until next time, go out and make it your best sales day ever.